Verath saw the boy on a 6-day morning, wedged between the fish market stalls and the outer wall of the customs shed, asleep on flattened crate board with his jacket pulled over his face like he knew the world would bother him less if he couldn't see it. She almost walked past. She had a supply run to finish before midday and the boy was not on it. But she stopped anyway because she was Keth-ari and Keth-ari had a particular failing. They could not help noticing what was directly in front of them. The boy was human. Young, 16 maybe, though human ages still confused her. He was thin in the way that meant not enough meals, not the lean kind that came from work. His jacket was Colonial Transit issue, the cheap kind they handed out at arrival depots, and it had been repaired in 3 places with 2 different colors of thread. His boots were good, which meant either someone had cared for him once or he had the resourcefulness to find something worth keeping. One boot was unlaced, the sole pulling away at the toe. The market opened around him the way water opened around a stone. Vendors arrived, stalls unfolded, buyers came and went. No one spoke to him. No one stepped around him with consideration. They stepped around him the way you stepped around a post, and the boy kept sleeping because there was nowhere else for him to be. Verath set down her supply satchel and crouched at the edge of the crate board, not close enough to startle, and waited. She was not a small person. Keth-ari ran large, broad-shouldered, thick-limbed, forward-tilted, built to carry things. Her skin was the color of old copper going green at the edges. Her face held 63 years of frontier worlds. She had run a parts workshop on the edge of Dreven Station for 11 of those years, and she knew the difference between trouble that was dangerous and trouble that was just lost. The boy shifted, pulled the jacket off his face, saw her. He did not run, which told her something. He went very still instead, with a particular quality of stillness she recognized. Not calm, not relaxed, but the stillness of something that had been frightened so many times it had stopped spending energy on the outward signs and just waited to see what happened next. "You're not from the market authority," he said. His voice was hoarse. "No," she said. "And you're not transit." "No." He looked at her for another moment, calculating. "Then what do you want?" Verath considered the question honestly. She had come down the 6-day market to buy calibration rods and a replacement pressure seal, and she was going to be late for both. But the honest answer was simpler than the complicated one. "There's a food stall 3 rows over," she said. "They open at 7th bell. I'm going to walk past it in approximately 4 minutes. You can walk with me or not." She picked up her satchel and stood. She did not look back. His name was Wren. He told her this 10 minutes later, sitting across from her at the food stall counter with both hands wrapped around a bowl of grain porridge like he expected someone to take it. She had ordered for both of them without making it a transaction, just asked for 2, set money down, did not look at him while he ate the way hungry people do not like to be observed. "How long have you been in Dreven?" she asked. 42 days, he said. "How did you arrive?" A pause. He was deciding how much to tell her, and she could watch him calculating through it the same way she had watched him calculate whether to follow her to the stall. He was not stupid. He was careful, which was a different thing and more interesting. "Freighter crew," he said. "I was working passage from Haven Drift. The crew chief said there'd be a berth back out after the offload." He looked at his porridge. There was. "Were you legally registered on that crew?" He looked up at her. "What does it matter?" "It matters because if you were not, you are currently listed in the Colonial Transit system as an unregistered transient miner, and when their sweep team comes through Dreven, which they do on the 5th day of every month, and the 5th is in 3 days, they will collect you and process you to Earth intake at Haven, where you will wait between 4 and 8 months for a placement that almost certainly doesn't exist." The porridge spoon stopped moving. "I know you know this," she said, "because you've been sleeping at the market wall instead of the transit hostel, which means you know what happens to unregistered minors who check in to transit hostels." He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "How do you know that much about transit law?" "I had a workshop apprentice 3 years ago," Verath said. "Jethrin, a Resi species, 14 years old. The transit classification system did not distinguish between an abandoned juvenile and a dangerous one. It took me 7 months to get him clear." She looked at the boy steadily. "I learned transit law the hard way." Ren absorbed this. "What happened to Jethrin?" "He runs my secondary fabrication shop on the north end of the station. He is now 22 years old and extremely opinionated about calibration standards." For the first time, the corner of the boy's mouth moved. Not quite a smile, but the ghost of something that had once been won and hadn't had enough practice recently. Verath made the calculation she had been making since the fish market wall. "The offer," she said, "is the storeroom behind my workshop, which has a proper sleeping pallet and a heating element that works. In exchange, you do what I tell you and don't steal from me. That is the complete list of terms." The silence that followed was not reluctance. It was the silence of someone who had learned that good things were usually conditional on something terrible and was looking for the terrible thing. "And when the transit sweep comes?" he asked. "We'll deal with that," she said. She said it simply, the way you said a true thing, and something in that simplicity got past whatever armor he'd built. He finished the porridge. He nodded once. She took him back to the workshop. It took him 4 days to stop sleeping with his boots on. Verath noticed these things but did not comment on them. She gave him tasks because useful work was the fastest way to feel like you belonged somewhere, and she picked the tasks carefully. Diagnostic work on small components first, because it required attention and precision, and there was a correct answer at the end of it, and correctness was something a person could trust. He was good with his hands. Better than good, actually. He had the kind of spatial intuition that took most apprentices years to develop. And on the 3rd day she caught him rerouting a power conduit in a way she hadn't shown him that was, once she looked at it, demonstrably better than her own configuration. She told him so. He looked at her like she'd said something in the wrong language. "It's just more efficient," he said. "Yes," she said, "that is what good is." On the 5th day, transit sweep day, she registered him. She filled the form at 5th bell before the sweep teams activated and submitted it to the Colonial Authority Records Office with a priority fee she didn't enjoy paying. By 7th bell, when the sweep team's route brought them down the Eastern Market Corridor, Ren was listed in the system as workshop apprentice, registered, non-transient. The sweep officer knocked on her door anyway. Verath opened it. The sweep officer was a Dreven-born Sulian, mid-career, with the particular self-importance of someone whose job gave them power over people who were already powerless. "We have a record of an unregistered human minor at this address," he said. "You have a record from 42 days ago," she said. "My apprentice has been registered since 5th bell this morning. His documentation is time-stamped and filed." She handed him a printed copy of the registration form, the priority receipt, and Ren's data chain verification. She had printed 3 copies. She kept 2. The officer looked at the paperwork. He was looking for something wrong with it, because sweep officers always looked for something wrong with paperwork. There was nothing wrong with it. She had been doing paperwork for 63 years and she was very good at paperwork. "I'll need to confirm this with Central Records," he said. "The confirmation code is at the bottom of page 2, she said pleasantly. He left. She went back inside. Ren was standing at the workshop bench, very still, pretending to be working on a relay housing. He had heard all of it. "That's it," he said. "Not entirely," she said. "The registration lasts 90 days. After 90 days, we renew it. And at renewal, I'll need to demonstrate occupational progress, which means you need to actually learn the work." He looked at the relay housing in his hands. He looked at her. You already know I can do the work. Yes, she said, I know. But the transit authority doesn't yet, and they will want to. It was the first time she said a thing that assumed a future, the weight of a sentence containing the word yet, the implication of a timeline beyond 90 days. His expression did not change on the surface. But she was Keth-ari, and Keth-ari noticed the small things. The months passed the way months do when there is work and rhythm. Not quickly, not slowly, but in increments that added up to something before you looked. Ren learned fast, the way people do when making up for time lost, with an urgency that was not desperation but something more like hunger that had found legitimate food. He stripped and rebuilt a field compressor in under 2 hours by the end of the second month. He could read circuit diagrams in 3 of the 5 standard formats by the end of the third. Jethrin came over from the north shop to check a parts delivery and found Ren re-indexing the diagnostic catalog and said, with the slightly outraged admiration of a senior apprentice who has been surpassed in something, "She didn't teach you that." "I figured it out," Ren said. Jethrin looked at Verath. Verath said nothing and looked somewhere else. Jethrin started coming by more often after that. The transit authority sent 2 more registration checks over the following months. She handled both. The first was a routine renewal query, easily satisfied. The second came with a supplemental inquiry from a supervisor, who had noticed that her address had registered 3 non-native juveniles in 11 years, and wanted to understand the pattern. She wrote back, her workshop's work, her apprenticeship record, Jethrin's current employment status, the registration of her previous 2 apprentices, her 11-year residency at Dreven. Factual, exhaustive, completely impenetrable. The supervisor sent an acknowledgement and did not write again. Ren read the supervisor's letter when she left it on the bench. He didn't read the reply, she hadn't left that out, but he knew it had been written, and he knew it was because of him. "How many times are they going to do this?" he asked. "Until they stop," she said, "or until we give them no more reason." He was quiet for a moment, "And if they don't stop?" She looked at him levelly. "Then I will still be writing letters. That is how it works." She said it the same way she'd said we'll deal with that at the food stall on the first morning, simply, as a true thing. And he received it the same way, with the particular stillness of someone who is not used to being believed in and does not entirely know what to do with it. He stayed. The laces on his boot had been fixed for months. He had fixed them himself, with proper lace cord from the workshop supply stock. On the 9th month, she registered him as a formal apprentice through the Colonial Trades Authority, a separate system from transit, older, with more teeth. The apprenticeship record meant a professional classification, a training stipend, and a permanent residency anchor that transit could not override. The form required a legal guardian's signature for a minor. She had been thinking about how to raise this since the 4th month. She was 63 years old, had lived alone for 14 of them, and had not expected at 63 to be considering something she had not considered at 30 or 40 or 50. But here was the thing in front of her, and she was Keth-ari, and Keth-ari could not look away from what was directly in front of them. She set the form on the bench beside him while he was working. "The guardian line requires a signature," she said. "It can be a temporary work supervisor's signature, which would satisfy the form but expire with your apprenticeship, or it can be a permanent guardian signature, which requires a different filing." She paused. "I am asking whether you would like the permanent one." Ren looked at the form for a long time. "You'd be doing that on purpose," he said, "not a question." "Yes." "Not just for the paperwork." "No," she said, "not just for the paperwork." He picked up the pen. He set it down again. He looked at his hands, grease-marked from the morning's work, steadier than they had ever been in the 42 days he'd spent sleeping on crate board at the fish market wall. "I don't know your family structure," he said. "What this means." For Keth-ari, it means, she said carefully, that you are mine to worry about, and I am yours to call on, in whatever terms make sense to you. The workshop held its small sounds, the hum of the fabrication unit, the tick of the pressure gauges, the distant market noise from 3 streets over. Okay, he said. He signed the form. She filed it that afternoon. When something true happened, you documented it. You put it in the permanent record. You made it a thing that existed in the world system as well as in the small particular world of a workshop at the edge of Dreven Station, where an old Keth-ari woman and a 16-year-old human boy had spent 9 months learning to be the kind of family that neither of them had planned for. The transit authority acknowledged the filing 11 days later with a single line, guardianship registered, case closed. Verath read the acknowledgement and put it in the correct file. Then she went back to the workshop, where Ren was explaining something to Jithrin with the focused energy of someone who had worked something out and was pleased about it, and Jithrin was arguing back with the energy of someone who had been nearly surpassed and was not going to admit it yet. She listened to them argue for a minute, then she went back to work. She had calibration rods to install, and a pressure seal that had needed replacing for much longer than it should have. She decided, going to have time for all of it.